Hello, everyone, and thank you for your participation. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to Ambassador Brownback and Ms. Lantos Sweat, IRF Secretariat, the International Organization to Preserve Human Rights, and the U.S. Baha'i Office of Public Affairs for making this event possible. As you know, this gathering is part of the annual IRF Summit in Washington, D.C., where victims and representatives of oppressed religious minorities and dissidents from all over the world, as well as scholars and religious leaders, talk about the pressing issues humanity is facing today. The topic of our discussion is hate propaganda in Iran, the ruling regime's vast cyber army, and its use of social media platforms and internet against religious minorities and dissidents, both in Iran and abroad. I also would like to ask our guests to talk about the continual passing and implementation of draconian laws aimed at religious minorities and dissidents. Our distinguished panelists today are Ayatollah Masumi Tehrani from Iran, Mr. Afshin Sajidi of International Organization to Preserve Human Rights, Mr. Fred Petrosian of Article 18 on behalf of Christians of Iran, and last but not least, Dr. Farhad Sabatan on behalf of Baha'is of Iran. Mr. Masumi Tehrani had planned to join us today from Tehran, but unfortunately, due to health issues related to COVID-19, he had to cancel at the last minute. But he managed to send us a detailed and well-crafted report assessing the dire human rights situations in Iran, and I will highlight the main points of his report today. We wish him a speedy and full recovery and thank him for his invaluable input. So let me begin with a brief biography of Ayatollah Masumi Tehrani and highlight the main points of his report. He was born in Tehran to a distinguished cleric family and attained the rank of Marja Taqlid, or source of emulation, in 1988. He strongly advocates human rights for all, regardless of religious ideology or belief. He is also an accomplished calligrapher and painter who uses his artwork to challenge openly Iran's ruling clergy and power elite to adopt a more tolerant social and political order. Mr. Masumi Tehrani has been pressured by authorities, detained and imprisoned, spent many years in prison on various occasions, starting when he was 23, and these oppressive measures against him continue today. He begins his analysis by stating that there are 8 known established religious groups in Iran: Sunnis, Shiites, Baha'is, Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, Yaresan, and Mandais. And all of them are under oppression by the ruling regime. And here are the key points of his report. First, Dadgah Vijay Rohaniyat, which was created early on. This is a special court for clerics established by Mr. Khomeini himself. This is a special clerical court created for prosecuting clerics whose ideologies and views of Islam do not adhere to the concepts of Velayat Faqih or Supreme Leader. This so-called judicial body is only accountable to the Supreme Leader himself and was created to hegemonize the clerics and the cleric establishment throughout Iran, thereby rendering Supreme Leader the ultimate authority on all religious, social, and political matters. Through its existence, this entity has been responsible for murder, imprisonment, house arrest, and exile of hundreds of prominent clerics who oppose the Supreme Leader. 2, the use of the term minority to define the different religious groups and dissidents is improper and does a disservice to these groups by fragmenting the society and empowering the group classified as majority, when in reality the rights of all individuals should be respected and protected, regardless of their creed. 3, because of its long and rich history, Iran has always been home to a diverse array of followers of many different religions and cultures. Historically, Iranians have always been tolerant of each other's religion and beliefs. So what we witness in Iran today is not a portrayal of Iran's true culture. 4, tragically, many oppressive laws and policies have been implemented and carried out throughout the years that prohibit or limit one's right to practice one's religion freely. Laws like Articles 499 and 500 of the Volume 5 of Regime's Penal Code, which grant unlimited power to authorities to ban anyone or any entity or group as a cult or sect, which in turn carries a wide range of penalties. 5, Mr. Masumi then ranks these religious groups in the order of severity of their oppression, starting with Baha'is at the top, followed by Shiites like Konabadi Sufis who do not accept the concept of Supreme Leader, along with Sunnis. Next are Christians and Yaresan, followed by Zarathustrians and Jews, and finally Mandavis. 6. Next, he explains that the oppressive measures of the regime fall into 3 categories and are carried out on all 3 fronts simultaneously. They are, first, attack on the religious identity of these groups through propaganda, misinformation, and disinformation, which is then used as a pretext and justification for their oppression. Second, limiting or taking away the most basic of their civil rights and liberties based on their religious identity, thus preventing their right to be a participant in the governance of their community and society at large. Third, and most importantly, attack on their God-given human rights and identity as equal members of citizenry, thereby justifying the gross violations of their human rights. And finally, he provides a list of 113 most prominent victims of the Special Court for the Clerics since its inception in 1978. And this was just a very brief highlight of the points in his paper. A copy of his article in Farsi will be available at the International Organization to Preserve Human Rights website. Before I continue, I would like to tell the audience that after the presentation of our guests, we have a question and answer session. You can post your questions in the chat box and we pose them properly, but we only have at most half an hour for questions and answers. With all that, I would like to ask Mr. Fred Petrosian to start his presentation. First, a brief bio. Fred is a veteran journalist and researcher. He's a senior collaborator and news editor with the Article 18 organization. He previously worked as the Iran editor of Global Voices. He's co-founder of the award-winning March 18 movement and online editor-in-chief of Radio Free Europe's Persian service. He also launched M Voices, a bilingual magazine for religious minorities in Iran. Fred has been an international speaker on civil society and citizen media in media and academic centers such as Yale University and Washington Post. Fred, go ahead, please.
First, thanks a lot for invitation. It's an honor to be among you guys and share a few words regarding the situation of Iranian Christians or the persecuted religious minorities. I use the word religious minorities instead of persecuted communities rather than religious minorities, because many people who belong to Muslim communities as dervishes, Sunnis, and others were persecuted too. Hate speech and hate propaganda is a very important thing. It's very fantastic that we share it here, because as history proves, and it's good to talk about it again and again, very atrocities in history, such as Holocaust and many crimes, didn't start with gas chambers or guns, but by words and hate speech and hate propaganda. And when we look at the Islamic Republic, from its inception, even Islamists who ruled the country before the revolution started this hate speech against religious communities or groups of Iranian citizens that they wanted either to eradicate or submit them to their will, including Christian converts, Baha'is, Yarsan, dervishes, women, and we can continue that. And one thing is interesting. If I just use it here, Johan Galtang's great Norwegian sociologist and father of peace studies terminology, if we have 3 forms of violence that we can consider, like physical violence or direct violence, prison, execution, confiscation of properties, structural violence or so-called legalized violence, and cultural violence. And the cement and the glue that brings all of these 3, in my opinion, together is hate propaganda and hate speech. That Islamic Republic used that to dehumanize Iranian citizens, including members of religious minorities that it wanted to target, and make it easier and more acceptable to punish them or to eradicate them. One point, I just mentioned a few words here. Christians, Zionists who collaborate with enemy. Enemy can be everybody, and is the favorable word for Iranian supreme leader. Cult members, sect members, people who are engaged with deviant belief or activity. And in addition to that, we can add people who engage the propaganda against Islamic Republic or disturbing or against the national security. And we see this, there are just a few labels and accusations that Iranian state use against Christians to send them to the prison. There is another thing that I must mention here. Some people say that, okay, there are some kind of recognized Christians in Iran, Armenians and Assyrians, and they have no problem. It's a kind of propaganda of regime. And there are Christian converts who are only targeted. It's completely false. First, all minorities face the restriction and discrimination, but each time Armenians and Assyrians didn't respect the red lines of the Islamic Republic, got the same punishment that other Christian converts. And recently, two of them, Shahbazian and Avedian, got 10 years of prison sentence just for sharing the gospel or praying with other, Iranian fellows, just for that. It's the kind of the myth of the Islamic Republic, and the people who are just justify that Armenians and Assyrians are very good and happy people. It's the reason why most of them have left country, of course. Saying that, I just want to focus on as we talked just last year, 53 Christians were arrested and sentenced, some of them, and others faced deprivation of their human rights and citizen rights, such as education, work, and so on. About 1.5 years ago, even there was a tragedy that many newspapers reported that a girl, a 2-year-old girl, adopted daughter, was ordered to be separated from her parents because the parents were converts and they're just forced to leave country. Now I'm just focusing about the structural violence and legalized violence that happened in last year, and we are feeling its impacts. There is amended Article 500 and amended Article 499 of Islamic Code that says, just one sentence is enough to show how bad it is. It says that people who engage in a deviant educational or propaganda activities or with collaboration of foreign countries, they can face up to 5 years prison. I mean, deviant belief or educational, it can be anything. And they mentioned that in real or virtual world. It can be even an email or SMS that you get. It opens the hands of Iranian judge, Islamic Republic judge, to rule over these harsher sentences against Christian converts or the other Christians who just, Armenians or Syrians who share the same faith with their fellow citizens. I mean, look, and they started to impose this rule to Iranian converts. 3 of them in Karaj got up to 3 years each sentences. It was 5 years, then it reduced to 3 years each. And then 3 others in Rasht got 5 years each just for deviant belief or activity. And it can be anything. Even when United Nations rapporteurs of human rights, a group of them about 1.5 years ago, wrote a letter to Iranian government and saying that they are really concerned about systematic persecution of Christians, especially Christian converts, and asked them about this accusation, such as propaganda against Islamic Republic or acting against national security. Explanation: the answer of the Iranian state was very simple. They are, cult members. And even they don't explain what does it mean, cult members. Even sometimes the persecutor called them Satan worshippers or belonging to Satanists. And it's not only on the judiciary, we heard that from the lips of Iranian people, Islamic Republic's people who run religious and political organizations, such as Saidi, who is the head of political office of Ayatollah Khamenei, who considers evangelical Christians that they call Tabshiri to the version of Islamic Daesh. You can see the mentality and how they look at these stories. And even an Armenian citizen, Avedian, recently, who was sentenced to 10 years, we see again the same wording of this amended Article 500 that really paved the way to accuse Christians or other members of religious minorities to have deviant belief or education. Saying this, I want to say, and this talk that say it's we should look at the bright side of the story. It's not only about us as Christians or converts, but about all religious minorities or persecuted community members, about their resistance, about that they didn't lie, they didn't submit to Islamic Republic's will, they preferred to go jail instead of denying their faith and their belief, and they can really teach lesson to anybody who wants to preserve his dignity. Even a campaign was launched within Iran. Article 18, of course, supported that, but there were Christians within country who launched a campaign that as a Christian, Persian-speaking Christian, I have right to worship. I have right to have a place to worship. They defied the Islamic Republic 43 years after its inception and imposing all his laws and sentencing people to prison and executing or killing them. Still, there is resistance, and it's great for not only Iranians, but all human beings who wants to preserve their identity and their dignity as human beings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred, for your enlightening presentation. I just wanted to add that as soon as there was the talks of passing Articles 499 and 500 in Iran, non-state universities or Daneshgah Azad immediately announced in their charter that Baha'is and Gonabadi Sufis cannot enroll just because of their religious identity, immediately. And the other point I have been stressing in our meetings is that it's not just these so-called religious groups, it's the whole population of Iran in one way, form, or shape that has been oppressed, which is evident by over 92% of the population boycotting the elections. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Mr. Afshin Sajidi to do his presentation. Unfortunately, because of misunderstandings, he prepared his presentation in Farsi, but he just informed me that he will put the English translation of his talks at the website, and it will be available for everybody. I apologize in advance. A brief bio of Afshin Sajidi. He is Director of Research and Analysis and an expert on the Middle East at International Organization to Preserve Human Rights. He was born in Tehran, received his diploma in mathematics and physics in 1981. Then he went on to graduate in the field of diplomatic and political relations from the University of International Relations in Tehran. A few years later, in 2001, he enrolled at the University of Leuven, Belgium, and received his master's degree in European politics and policies. Since then, he has worked with International Organization to Preserve Human Rights as a political and Middle East policy advisor, in addition to being a director of research and analysis. Mr. Sajidi, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Hamid, for introducing me. And just I have to mention that the misunderstanding was from my side. and that was and that is I have to offer once again my apologize because that. Anyhow, I will translate myself my article, and I will put it and place it on the website of IRF. Just I will introduce my article in English, and then I will go further in Persian. The title of my article is Genetic Fascism and Taxidermy of Sufism. Since the element of love plays a pivotal role in Sufism, Sufism is the most important barrier to the systematic hatred of the Iranian regime. My speech is about introducing the complex measures of the Iranian system to evacuate, to make empty the mystical content of Sufism and replace it with the suppression and prejudice and the promoting some discriminations, which I name it genetic fascism. So I will go further in Persian, and I apologize once again. فاشیسم ژنتیکی و تاکسیدرمی تصوف. نفرت پراکنی به هر اقدام یا عملی که به ویژه بر اساس برخی از تفاوت‌ها مانند نژاد، مذهب، جنسیت یا گرایش جنسی، هر نوع ناهنجاری و نهایتاً خشونت را علیه یک فرد یا گروه تشویق و ترویج کند گفته می‌شود. بر اساس این تعریف نفرت پراکنی همواره در تاریخ وجود داشته و همیشه گروهی از انسانها قربانی خشونت ورزی‌های ناشی از تندروی و تعصب‌های به ویژه مذهبی گروه‌های دیگر گردیدند. در مقابل حکومت‌ها معمولاً با حفظ تعادل و موازنه میان مؤلفه‌های گوناگون قدرت در جامعه و جلوگیری از نوچ گرفتن و قدرت یافتن یک گروه یا یک باور خاص که می‌توانست موجودیت آنها را تهدید کند، همواره تلاش کرده اند تا حدی این تندروی‌ها را مهار کرده، به ویژه اگر قربانیان از نخبگان اقتصادی یا فرهنگی جوامع محسوب می‌شدند و امنیت و آرامش آنها می‌توانست در راستای منافع هیئت‌های حاکمه ارزیابی گردد. در این حالت قربانیان را با شرایط خاص تحت حمایت قرار داده و مانع نفرت پراکنی متعصبین برای آنها می‌شدند. اما تاریخ بشر در عین حال شاهد بزنگاه‌هایی بوده است که طی آنها گروه‌های نفرت پراکن قدرت سیاسی را نیز به طور کامل قبضه کرده و با استفاده از امکانات دولتی روند نفرت پراکنی بر علیه گروهی از شهروندان بی‌دفاع را با حداکثر قدرت ممکن به طور سازماندهی شده در سراسر جوامع تحت حاکمیت خود به پیش بردند. به عنوان دو نمونه معروف از این دست میتوان به موارد آلمان هیتلری و ایتالیای موسولینی اشاره کرد که در تاریخ تحت عنوان فاشیسم شناخته میشوند. بنابراین فاشیسم به طور کلی عبارت است از نظامی که با فردیت و فردگرایی مخالف باشد و برای فرد تا آنجا ارزش قائل است که در خدمت هیئت حاکمه باشد، در حالی که معمولا در نظام‌های دموکراسی مشروعیت نظام حکومتی از مردم است. درست بالعکس در نظام فاشیستی ارزش هر فرد متناسب با خدماتی است که به اهداف تعریف شده یا اهداف از پیش تعریف شده توسط هیئت حاکمه ارائه می‌دهد. بر این اساس دانشمندان علوم سیاسی برای فاشیسم مشخصاتی را برشمردند، از جمله مخالفت دائمی با صلح، ضدیت بی‌دلیل با لیبرالیسم، تحمیل یک الگوی واحد زندگی برای تمامی آحاد جامعه، ترسیم شخصیت کاریزماتیک و جعل تقدس برای رهبر و پیشوا، تفسیر دموکراسی به بی‌بندوباری و خودخواهی، ترویج قهرمانسازی در همه رشته‌ها و زمینه‌ها، ترویج و تبلیغ روحیه جنگ طلبی در تمامی سطوح جامعه و سرانجام استقرار یک نظام سیاسی تک حزبی. این تعاریف اگرچه در کتب علوم سیاسی به عنوان مشخصه‌های فاشیستی، حکومت‌های فاشیستی قید شده‌اند، اما تک تک آحاد مردم ایران بیش از 40 سال است که در عمل با یکایک سلول‌ها و با بند وجودشان تک تک این مشخصه‌ها را لمس و تجربه کردند. بنابراین ترویج تنفر و خشونت اگر به خصوص بر علیه شهروندان خودی و در سطح ملی و با امکانات دولتی به عنوان یک پروژه ملی به اجرا درآید، از آن به فاشیسم تعبیر می‌گردد. محققان علوم سیاسی وجوه مختلفی را برای فاشیسم برشمردند، مانند فاشیسم سیاسی، فرهنگی، اقتصادی و حتی مذهبی. اما بیشک خاستگاه تمامی حکومت‌های فاشیستی همواره مذهب بوده است. در همه حکومت‌های فاشیستی همواره قرائت شخصی ناقص و محدود از یک دین به عنوان نظریه یا ایدئولوژی معرفی و در سطح فرادست تبیین و تثبیت می‌گردد. آنگاه تمامی سطوح فرودست به تقدس و اجرای دقیق مفاد ایدئولوژی حکومتی فراخوانده می‌شوند و همگان باید علایق و سلایق خود را در مذبح و معبد بت حکومت قربانی کنند. برای مثال در خصوص دو کشور آلمان و ایتالیا، ترکیبی از ایده‌های نجات پرستانه افراطی برخاسته از تعصبات مذهبی و همراه برداشتی جاهلانه و عوام فریبانه از برخی از یافته‌های علمی موجب ایجاد و استقرار فاشیسم در هر دو کشور گردید. در ایران نیز مردم از دیرباز قربانی فاشیسم بودند. در زمان ساسانیان کرتیر موبد در اتحاد با حکومت و با شناسایی احساسات و باورهای خالصانه مردم نسبت به تعالیم اصیل زرتشت پیامبر که از دوران باستان در میان آنها رواج داشت، به نحوی کاملا زیرکانه تمامی مکتوبات، آثار و حتی سنگ‌نوشته‌های پیش از خود را نابود و قرائت مورد پسند خودش از دین و آیین زرتشت را ارائه داد. قرائت ارائه شده از دین زرتشت که در تضاد کامل با تعالیم اصیل این آیین بود، به عنوان ایدئولوژی حکومتی در سراسر امپراتوری ساسانی تبلیغ و همگان به اطاعت از آن فراخوانده شدند. بدیهی است که همانند همه حکومت‌های فاشیستی در طول تاریخ، در زمان ساسانیان نیز افکار و آرای متفاوت با قرائت حکومتی من جمله تنوع‌های دینی شامل یهودیان، مسیحیان، بوداییان به شدت سرکوب می‌شدند. قتل مانی پیامبر و سرکوب مانویان و بعدتر قتل 12,000 مزدکی در یک شب، آن هم توسط انوشیروان دادگر، از نمونه‌های اقدامات فاشیستی حکومت ساسانی به شمار می‌رود. پس از هجوم عرب نیز باز مردم ایران همچنان قربانی اعمال شیوه‌های فاشیستی از سوی حکومت‌ها بودند. فاتحان عرب علیرغم تعالیم قرآن و پیامبر اسلام حتی تکلم به زبان مادری را برای ایرانیان ممنوع کرده بودند و مردم را با شیوه‌های خشونتبار مجبور به تغییر دین و آیین می‌کردند. حکومت‌های ظالم و ستمگر اموی و بعد عباسی با کمک و مساعدت روحانیون حکومتی به اعمال شیوه‌های فاشیستی و برتری نژادی اقدام می‌کردند و اگرچه به عقیده برخی جنبش مزدکیان بعد از اسلام نیز در قالب قیام‌ها و مقاومت‌هایی مانند خرمدینان همچنان ادامه یافت، اما آنچه موجب محدود شدن اقدامات فاشیستی حکومت‌ها گردید بیشک مبارزه فرهنگی عمومی با فاشیست‌ها تحت پرچم عرفان و تصوف بود. در حقیقت تصوف و عرفان در طول تاریخ همواره بزرگترین مانع در راه استقرار کامل یک نظام فاشیستی مبتنی بر مذهب در جامعه ایران بوده است. در طول تاریخ تصوف از وجوه مختلف به مبارزه با فاشیسم پرداخته است. روحانیون همواره تلاش می‌کردند تا کاخ نفوذ و حکمرانی خود را بر 4 ستون گذشته پرستی، قدیس سازی، تقلید به جای اندیشیدن و سرانجام ترویج تعصب و خشونت بنا کنند. طبیعی است که این 4 محور در حقیقت میدانهای رویاروی تصوف با فاشیسم بود. در نخستین مصاف عرفان و تصوف مانع از توجه جامعه به گذشته میشد، در حالی که روحانیون حکومتی همواره در تلاش بودند تا مردم را در گذشته اسیر و در بند نگاه دارند. تصوف اما تلاش میکرد با جلب و عطف توجه تک تک آحاد به 2 مقوله حال و اکنون، 2 مقوله کلید در تصوف، مانع رواج گذشته پرستی در جامعه گردد و با آنها خاطر نشان می‌ساخت که نوگرایی مغایرت با باورهای مذهبی ندارد، چنان که می‌گفتند دم به دم نو می‌شود دنیا و ما بیخبر از نو شدن اندر بقا. و یا عارفی دیگر می‌گفت بیزارم از آن کهنه خدایی که تو داری، هر روز مرا تازه خدایی دیگر آید. مبارزه با قدیس سازی میدان دیگر مبارزه تصوف با فاشیسم بود. تصوف همه انسانها را مقدس می‌داند و آنها را دعوت می‌کند تا هر آنچه که در طلبش هستند در وجود خود و نه در دیگری بجویند و بیابند. چنان که می‌گفتند ای نسخه نامه الهی که تویی و ای آینه جمال شاهی که تویی، بیرون ز تو نیست هر چه در عالم هست، در خود بطلب هر آنچه خواهی که تویی. سومین میدان مبارزه تصوف با خرافه گستری دعوت بلکه الزام انسانها به اندیشیدن بود. ای برادر تو همه اندیشه ای، مابقی خود پوست و خود ریشه ای. و در حالی که روحانیون برای تضمین بقا، منظور روحانی حکومتی البته، برای تضمین و ارتقای اطاعت پذیری مردم مفهوم تقلید را ترویج می‌کردند و تلویحاً از مردم می‌خواستند تا اندیشیدن را متوقف کنند، مربیان باطن علنا یادآور می‌شدند که خلق را تقلیدشان داد برباد. ای 200 لعنت بر این تقلید باد. میدان دیگر مبارزه تصوف با فاشیسم میدان ترویج مدارا و مقابله با تعصب بود. مربیان عرفانی تعصب را خوناشامی و در نتیجه قهری کودک بودن اندیشه می‌دانستند و می‌گفتند تعصب خامی است، تا جنینی کار خوناشامی است. بر سر در خانقاه عارف نامی شیخ ابوالسعید ابوالخیر که پناهگاه بیپناهان جامعه بود نگاشته بودند: هر که را نزد خدای تعالی به جان ارزد، البته که در این سرای به نان ارزد. و یا عارف نامی شیخ ابوالحسن خرقانی نیز بر سر در خانقاهش نگاشته بود: هر که بر این خانقاه گذر کرد، نانش دهید و از ایمانش مپرسید. چنین سطح والایی از تعهد به مدارا و رعایت حقوق دگراندیشان و مبارزه با فاشیسم در جامعه 1000 سال پیش واقعا اعجاب آور است. تصوف ایران سهمی کلان در پیروزی تمدن فعلی بشر دارد و هیچ اندیشمندی نمیتواند منکر تأثیر تعالیم و آموزش‌های بزرگی مانند خوارزمی، ابوعلی سینا، مولوی، حافظ و بسیاری دیگر بر اندیشمندان بزرگی مانند گوته، شیلر و مونتسکیو باشد. جناب شیخ احمد غزالی نخستین اندیشمندی بود که با نگارش کتاب سوانح العشاق ضمن آنکه پارسی نگاری را که تا آن زمان جرم تلقی میشد آغاز کرد، همچنان بنیانگذار مبحثی جدید در تاریخ بشر به نام عشق شناسی بود و می‌دانیم که عشق حداعلای محبت است که در تضاد کامل با تنفر و نفرت پراکنی قرار دارد. عرفان و تصوف ایران همچنین سهمی ناشناخته در پیروزی تمدن بشری و استقرار ارزش‌های بشردوستانه در سراسر جهان دارد. برخی از جریان‌های بزرگ تاریخ مانند اومانیسم که نهایتاً پیدایی و استقرار دموکراسی منجر شد، توسط مربیان باطنی و اندیشمندان اروپایی آموخته شد که در این مقاله کوتاه فرصت پرداختن به آنها نیست. اما باید توجه کرد هنگامی که مردم ایران در سال 1357 حاکمان فعلی را بر سرنوشت خود مسلط کردند، تصورشان مدینه فاضله‌ای بود که در آثار عرفا و اندیشمندان نظیر فارابی، مولوی و سعدی و بسیاری دیگر با آنها آشنا شده و خو گرفته بودند، چرا که تصوف ایران تا آن زمان توانسته بود فاشیسم مذهبی را تا حد زیادی مهار کند. در اینجا باید به یک نکته کلیدی توجه شود و آن این است که علیرغم تصور ما، این شاعران و سخنوران و نویسندگان پارسی گو و پارسی سرای نبودند که اشعاری با مضامین اخلاقی و عرفانی سروده باشند، بلکه این مربیان باطنی و اهل عرفان بودند که عالی ترین تعالیم تمدن بشری را به زبان شعر بیان کردند تا بتوانند با استفاده از توانایی‌ها و ظرفیت‌های ملودی‌های پنهان در اشعار ذهن شنوندگان و خوانندگان آثارشان که گاهی شاگردانشان نیز بودند را در مقابل نفوذ وسوسه‌های فاشیستی و تعصب‌گرایانه ایمن گردانند. این حجم عظیم از توصیه‌ها و اندرس‌های اخلاقی و اجتماعی که در آثار ادبی زبان فارسی موجود است، در کنار آموزش‌های ادبی و عرفانی که گاه مستقیم و گاه ضمن داستان‌های دلنشین ارائه شده‌اند، به خوبی نشان دهنده وضعیت محیط آن زمان و تلاش‌های شکست خورده اما بسیار عظیم اردوی فاشیسم در نهادینه کردن ضد ارزش‌های حقوق بشری، خرافه‌گستری، عوام‌فریبی و نفرت پراکنی در جامعه ایران میباشد. متاسفانه تولیدات محتوای عرفانی، فرهنگی و ادبی در سده دهم هجری تقریباً به طور کامل متوقف می شود و این زمانی است که شاه اسماعیل صفوی با استفاده از ظرفیت‌های 1000 ساله تصوف نخستین دولت مستقل و متمرکز ایرانی را با الگوبرداری از شیوه مملکتداری ساسانیان ولی با جایگزینی تفسیر فاشیستی از تشیع به جای تفسیر فاشیستی کرتیری از تعالیم زرتشت که در زمان ساسان رواج داشت در ایران مستقر می‌کند. درست همانند ساسانیان در دوران حکومت صفویه قرائت‌های خرافی از تشیع به عنوان ایدئولوژی رسمی در کشور تبلیغ می‌گردد و همه نهله‌ها و اندیشه‌های متفاوت با قرائت حکومتی به شدت سرکوب می‌شوند و نیز در راستای تبیین و تبلیغ ایدئولوژی حکومتی صدها کتب حدیث به نگارش در می‌آیند و صدها هزار حدیث جدید جعل می‌گردد. اگرچه استقرار حکومت صفوی درست مانند آلمان هیتلری و ایتالیای موسولینی به ایجاد وحدت، تمرکز سیاسی و حتی توسعه اقتصادی منجر می‌گردد، ولی حکومت صفوی برای تحکیم قدرت خود بی توجه به موزاییک فرهنگی تنوع‌های جامعه ایران به اعمال شیوه‌های فاشیستی در اداره کشور و سرکوب همه اندیشه‌های غیر حکومتی متوسل می‌گردد و در این راستا کار چنان بر اهل اندیشه و خرد سخت می‌گردد که عرفان و تصوف برای بیش از 2 قرن از ایران رخت برمی‌بندند و تولیدات عرفانی به طور کامل متوقف می‌شود و به جای آن صدها کتاب حدیث و روایت جعل و منتشر می‌گردد. همچنین در زمینه جعل تقدس نیز رواج امامزاده پرستی کار را به جایی میرساند که در بسیاری از نقاط ایران روحانیان برای کنترل مردم امامزاده‌های دروغین را جعل و ایجاد کرده و از مردم میخواستند که برای تمشیت امور به جای توسل به اندیشه و خرد به این امامزاده‌های جعلی توسل جویند. نهایتاً حکومت صفوی مانند ساسانیان و همه حکومت‌های فاشیستی آنچنان از درون دچار فساد و فروپاشی می‌گردد که ارتش عظیم قزلباش در برابر هجوم 6000 پیاده افغان از بیابان به پایتخت یعنی شهر اصفهان تاب نمی‌آورد و سلسله صفویه برای همیشه منقرض می‌گردد. پس از انقراض صفویه و برقراری آزادی نسبی در کشور دوباره رهبران طریقت و عرفان به ایران باز می‌گردند و شروع به تربیت جامعه ایران می‌کنند. نهایتاً در دوران معاصر در نتیجه زحمات و طاقت فرسای رهبران طرایق مختلف بار دیگر پتانسیل بالای از ارزش‌های والای بشری در جامعه ایران ایجاد می‌گردد، اگرچه جدال ارزش و ضد ارزش همچنان به صورت زیرپوستی ادامه داشت. متاسفانه با استقرار نظام جمهوری اسلامی در ایران این موازنه به نفع خرافه پرستان تغییر کرد و پس از آن به نفع خرافه گستران تغییر کرد و پس از آن درست مانند دوران ساسانیان و صفویه برای اهل عرفان و اندیشمندان سخت گردید. با استقرار یک قرائت فاشیستی از تشیع تحت عنوان ولایت فقیه در سطح فرادست، سطح فرودست ملزم به تبیین آن برای آحاد جامعه در داخل و خارج از کشور گردید. با استقرار اخباریون در رأس هرم قدرت، جعل حدیث و نیز جعل تقدس شتاب فزاینده‌ای به خود گرفت و به مفهوم سابق و ذکر امامزاده مفهوم جدید و تأسیس آقازاده نیز اضافه گردید. تقریبا تمامی تنوع‌های قومی و دینی به شدت سرکوب شدند و در این میان تنها سلسله نعمت‌الله گنابادی به دلیل نفوذ گسترده در میان آحاد جامعه توانست اندکی بیشتر در برابر تجاوزات حکومتی مقاومت کند. اما با توجه به اینکه تعالیم اقطاب سلسله گنابادی پس از انقلاب در تناقض کامل با خواستهای نظام جمهوری اسلامی بود، دستگاه‌های امنیتی ابتدا تلاش کردند تا با قتل 2 تن از اقطاب سلسله گنابادی به قول خودشان بساط عرفان و تصوف را برای همیشه از ایران جمع کنند. ولی مرحوم آقای حاج علی آقا تابنده محبوب علی شاه با تعیین رجل مبارز و آزادیخواه جناب دکتر نورعلی تابنده ضمن غافلگیر کردن سران نظام جمهوری اسلامی در عین حال ضربه مهلک و کاری بر پیکر خرافه گستری در ایران وارد کرد. پس از آن بود که رهبران نظام جمهوری اسلامی عاجز از رویارویی با عرفان و تصوف به مکر متوسل شده و تصمیم به تخلیه محتوای آن از طریق ترویج برنامه‌ریزی شده خرافه در درون سلسله نعمت‌اللهی گرفتند. این روند که توسط شخص دکتر نورعلی تابنده به نفوذ موریانه فقیه تعبیر شده است، نهایتاً منجر به انفعال، تقدیرگرایی و بیعملی برخی از دراویش گنابادی در انجام وظیفه‌ای که تعهد کرده بودند، یعنی حراست و حفاظت از کیان تصوف و ارزش‌های انسانگرایانه گردید و به جز عده‌ای معدود اکثریت وضع پیش آمده را پذیرفته و اقدام مهمی برای مقابله با آن نکردند. نظر به اینکه عرفان و تصوف که بر اساس رکن رکین محبت پراکنی بنا شده است، طبیعتاً بزرگترین مانع در برابر نفرت پراکنی به شمار می رود. نظام جمهوری اسلامی ناتوان از مهار تصوف ایران پس از اعمال بازداشت خانگی و قتل دکتر نورعلی تابنده رجل مبارز و سومین قطب مقتول سلسله گنابادی با هدف مهندسی قطبیت اقدام به ترویج این عقیده ضد صوفیانه پرداخت که گویا امر قطبیت و راهبری عرفانی در تصوف ایران موروثی بوده و فرزندان اقطاب پیشین به دلیل برخورداری از ژن برتر یا ژن قطبیت میبایست زعامت سلسله نعمت‌الله گنابادی را در دست گیرند. بدین ترتیب سومین مفهوم در تقدس سازی یعنی مولازاده پرستی به دو مفهوم قبلی امامزاده پرستی و آقازاده پرستی اضافه گردید. لذا آشکار می شود که رهبران نظام جمهوری اسلامی در نظر دارند همان بلایی را که با امامزاده پرستی بر سر دین و با آقازاده پرستی بر سر کشور آوردند، اکنون با ترویج مولازاده پرستی بر سر عرفان و تصوف آورند. بی جهت نبود که دکتر نورعلی تابنده طی فرمایشی بسیار حکیمانه مجریان این پروژه شیطانی را موریانه فقیه نامید. در حقیقت سه مفهوم امامزاده، آقازاده و مولازاده مؤلفه های شکل دهنده فاشیسم ژنتیکی هستند که از آنها برای پوچ کردن، تو خالی کردن و بی محتوا کردن دین، ملیت و عرفان استفاده می شود. هدف نهایی از اعمال فاشیسم ژنتیکی اجرای پروژه تاکسیدرمی تصوف است که طی آن تمامی محتوای عرفانی تخلیه و پوشالی از خرافه به جای آن تعبیه گردد و از این پوستی تاکسیدرمی شده صرفاً به عنوان وسیله تزیینی برای فریب عرفان دوستان سطحی نگر استفاده گردد. با توجه به اینکه عرفان و تصوف متد تربیت درونگرایانه است که با فطرت و کرامت انسانی در ارتباط بوده و منزه از دینها و آیین‌های منطقه‌ای است، لذا اصول آن نیز در سرتاسر جهان از هند تا ایران و از سیبری تا شمال آفریقا و تا آمریکای لاتین یکسان میباشد و در هر یک از این نقاط طرایق مختلف به تربیت درونی سالکان اقدام می‌کنند. ناگفته پیداست که این طرایق عرفانی در هر محل و در هر کشور مورد احترام ساکنان محلی بوده و از نفوذ خاص در میان آنها برخوردارند. این نفوذ از دید مقامات نظام جمهوری اسلامی پنهان نمانده و آنها مدتی است که با چراغ خاموش در حال رایزنه و تعامل با رهبران طریقت‌های مختلف در سراسر جهان و به ویژه در آفریقا هستند تا در کنار نفوذ فسادآمیز در میان دولتمردان این کشورها و در میان روحانیون محلی همچنین راه سوم نفوذی را نیز در میان اهل طریقت در این مناطق باز کنند تا بتوانند از این سه مجرا به ترویج نفرت پراکنی و خشونت بپردازند. متاسفانه عامل اجرای این پروژه نفوذ و هماهنگ کننده طرایق عرفانی در سراسر جهان همان جریانی است که از درون سلسله نعمت الله بنابادی و از درون خانواده قطب مقتول پروژه حصر، بازداشت خانگی و نهایتاً قتل دکتر نورعلی تابنده را به اجرا درآورد و اکنون به عنوان پاداش خوشخدمتی مقاطعه کاری پروژه هماهنگی جریان‌های عرفانی در سطح بین‌المللی به آنها واگذار شده است. نظام جمهوری اسلامی که در حال حاضر کفگیر مشروعیتش به ته دیگ مذهب رسیده است، اکنون چشم طمع به دیگ عرفان و تصوف دوخته و در تلاش است تا از خوشنامی اهل طریقت که بر مدار محبت و دوستی می‌گردد برای پیشبرد اهداف نفرت پراکنانه استفاده کند. در اینجا این جانب فرصت را غنیمت شمرده با تعصیب تعلیمات پیر و مربی عرفانی جناب دکتر نورعلی تابنده نسبت به نفوذ موریانه هایی که از سوی نظام جمهوری اسلامی در تمامی خلل و فرج تمدن غرب مانند دانشگاه‌ها، مؤسسات آموزشی، احزاب سیاسی، روزنامه‌ها، شبکه‌های اجتماعی و نظیر آنها نفوذ کرده و با هدف تخریب ارزش‌های دموکراتیک در حال نفرت پراکنی هستند، هشدار می‌دهم و نظر صاحب نظران و دولتمردان را به خطر عظیم این موریانه‌ها جلب می‌کنم. بدیهی سهلنگاری در رویایی با این خطر عظیم می‌تواند همان بلایی را که به نام اسلام بر سر ایران آورد، اکنون و در آینده به نام عرفان بر سر جهان بیاورد. سپاسگزارم.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajidi, for your
You're welcome.
enlightening report. I eagerly await the translation of your
Surely, I will do it.
In English.
Yes.
It already answers several of the questions I have received.
Yes.
So we look forward to it. Next is my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Farhad Sabatan. He teaches economics at California State University East and has been a research economist in the private and public sector for more than 16 years. He is currently a spokesperson for Baha'i International Community, United Nations, and has been involved in the human rights field for the past 14 years. He has given many interviews about the situation of Baha'is in Iran on a variety of news media programs, including BBC, VOA, NPR, New York Times, and many more. He obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in Economics from University of California, Davis. Thank you, Dr. Sabatan. Please go ahead.
It's my pleasure, and thank you. I would like to express my deep gratitude to IOPHR for organizing these gatherings, and with warm greetings to the honored guest and the appreciation for viewers who have joined us. I'd like to take this opportunity to share some of the most recent developments about the continued persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. It is really with deep regret to inform you that the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran has continued unabated. And in fact, it has intensified in several areas, while Iranians themselves are facing unprecedented social, economic, environmental, even medical and political challenges. Before I get to the campaign of hatred and hate mongering by the Iranian government against minorities, allow me to just share with you some of the most recent developments that have come across over the past few months. At this time, no less than 1,000 cases dealing with arrests, interrogation, sentencing, imprisonment of Baha'is are open within the Iranian judicial system solely and exclusively because they're Baha'is. Iranian authorities have continued to arbitrarily arrest, interrogate, sentence, and imprison Baha'is without a shred of justifiable evidence and due process, while referring in the official court documents to Baha'is as Ferqe Zaleh, the misguided sect. At the same time, Baha'i homes are still being raided, properties confiscated, individuals arrested en masse, while the Iranian government continues its hate propaganda against the Baha'i citizens in the media, in the streets, in festivals, at virtually any public forum that attracts sizable population. Since January of 2022, within the last 6 months, no less than 54 Baha'is have been either arrested, interrogated, sentenced, imprisoned, transferred to another prison, or are awaiting their court hearings in provinces of Fars, Tehran, Mazandaran, Yazd, Khuzestan, and Azerbaijan. The most dramatic of these has been that of 26 Baha'is who have just been sentenced on June 23rd to a total of 85 years in prison. The false, baseless, and prejudicial charges against them is significantly notable and is written as follows, and I'm quoting. This is, of course, a translation. The charges against these citizens are their presence and gathering in poor and marginal neighborhoods of Shiraz, assemblage in religious holy places and tourist attraction sites, namely Shah Cheragh, Hafiziyeh, Persepolis, and Narajistan, under the pretext of conducting surveys regarding the water crisis, social suffering, and environmental advocacy. And then again, the charge continues. But in reality, assembly and collusion for the purpose of causing intellectual and ideological insecurity in Muslim society based on their false and diversionary claims and their dangerous belief of the supremacy of their perverse sect. By the way, the word in Persian was misspelled in this sentencing. Over all divine religions and Islam in particular, with the intention of creating sedition and attracting Muslims and their approach toward fulfilling the unholy designs and plans of their leader of the sect. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just note the nature of these charges again. Let's carefully see what the charges are. Their presence and gatherings in poor and marginal neighborhoods of Shiraz, assemblage in religious holy places and tourist attraction sites, conducting surveys regarding the water crisis, social sufferings, and environmental advocacy. This is what Baha'is are charged for. But now, please pay attention to the interpretation of these so-called charges. Again, the sentence says, but then these activities are, in reality, it says, but in reality, assembly and collusions for the purpose of causing intellectual and ideological insecurity in Muslim society, as if the Iranian citizens, who are definitely filled with intellect themselves, are so insecure about the religion that the social activities of these Baha'is are creating insecurity in their midst. So there are more charges on these Baha'is that I don't want to take the time to go over because these are all false and malicious charges. Unfortunately, many of these 26 that have been arrested are couples with young children. And as was mentioned by my dear friend that the children are now being separated from their parents, and there's really no one to take care of them other than distant families. Unfortunately, the suffering of the Baha'is does not end with arrest and imprisonment. The tragedy is unfolding on a much larger scale through public and social media, as well as large exhibitions, book fairs, national and regional contests, and other fora. For example, it's been reported that on 18, 19, and 20th of January 2022, the second round of a 3-day poster design workshop to spread misinformation and hatred against the Baha'is was held in Karachi. This followed from a similar workshop, which was previously organized in Shiraz. The second workshop appears to be part of an ongoing program of anti-Baha'i propaganda organized by the Secretariat comprising the visual festival group called Muqaddas Nama, or Pseudo-Sacred, and the Institute of Sects and Religions of Zahedan called Mafaz, and the Iranian Propagation Office. Participants of these workshops were encouraged to design posters based on anti-Baha'i themes. The objectives of these state-funded institutions is to induce hatred and promote violence against the Baha'i community based on their religious beliefs, and participants were incentivized by generous prizes and rewards to create graphic artworks such as posters featuring anti-Baha'i propaganda. What is the result of this? The result of this is that even judicial authorities in the same city in Shiraz, especially for the case of the 26th, has said that he intends to uproot the Baha'i community in Shiraz. Such state-sponsored programs are held in various forms, while the Baha'i community is never permitted to present itself in any forum, nor in the country's official media, nor the legal system to defend itself. The campaign of hatred against the Baha'is by state security and government agencies has precedence. Among these measures is the persecution of presentation of numerous anti-Baha'i books at Tehran book exhibition and fairs. In recent years, the Tehran Book Exhibition and Fair has become a venue for promoting violence and hate mongering against the Baha'is, with the presence of books targeting various schools of thought, Baha'is being one of them, and religious minorities, other minorities, others. The publisher of these books are mostly dependent on and financed either by the government or by religious institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Baha'i international community has reiterated recently in its statement before the 49th regular session of the Human Rights Council, saying, "We are deeply concerned by the state-driven and organized systematic persecution of the Baha'is in Iran, now entering its 44th year. New incarcerations are on the rise. There are now more than 1,000 Baha'is waiting for a lengthy period of time, in some cases even years, between their initial arrest, their legal hearings, and their summons to prison, causing devastation to innocent people's lives. The punitive bails and the limbo created by these pending verdicts is adding yet another form of heavy psychological pressure and unbearable financial burden on these already wronged individuals. Also of particular concern is the rising trend of confiscation of properties belonging to Iranian Baha'is, and this is not new. However, the Iranian authorities are now increasingly using the legal system to seize and transfer the Baha'i properties to further enrich the parastatal organization called the Execution of Imam Khomeini's Order, also known as Setat, which is entirely controlled by the highest level of the Iranian leadership. The international community must call upon the Iranian government to honor its pledges to this council, to the Human Rights Council, and once and for all allow the Baha'is of Iran to live and practice their faith freely along with all Iranians. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sabetan. I just wanted to add this shocking precedent that was set through the so-called judicial system of the regime that happened a few years ago in Mazandaran and reaffirmed by the higher court, confiscating property from Baha'is solely based on their faith. Just because they're Baha'is, their properties were taken away. And that has become law of the land now, which is tragically maybe the least of what is happening to Baha'is in Iran. Okay, now we go to questions and answers. Any comments from anybody? Fred, Afshin, Dr. Shabatan, before I pose the first question? Go ahead, please.
Just one thing I want to emphasize, as you said and other honorable guests, I think the freedom of religious minorities or religious communities is something important and vital for all Iranians, because it doesn't matter you believe in what, it means you have right to talk about your faith or your belief. If you're Christian, Dervish, Baha'i, atheist, or whatever, it's the question of right and freedom of belief. It's not who is right, who is wrong. We talk just about the right.
Exactly, very eloquently put. I also forgot to mention that what is missing here is the plight of the Sunni communities in Iran. There are over 20 million Sunnis in Iran, but they have been fragmented based on their ethnicity, and they're being oppressed separately. So they're unaware of, or they're consumed by their own survival. And the similarities are shocking. What they have done to Baha'is, to Gonabadi Sufis, Christians, especially Christians of Muslim background. And I have sent the reports on these to State Department and USEF. Every religious leader, imam of different ethnic Sunni groups, has been either murdered, imprisoned, or silenced, and replaced by Mr. Khamenei's appointee, which is tragic. Now, let me go to the first question. This is regarding the Gonabadi Sufis. A Gonabadi Sufi from Canada is asking, now that the regime has managed to murder Dr. Tabande and replace him with Khamenei's appointee, what is the future of Gonabadi Sufism? Mr. Sajidi, if you want to.
First, we have to define what do you mean by Gonabadi Sufism? Anyhow, if you mean the official version or the official Gonabadi Sufis, I think that now it has been in the service of the government to promote governmental Sufism across the world. What I can see now. Anyhow, I think that the people who see themselves as loyal students of the Dr. Tabande, they have to do their duties against the Sufism, and they have to just make enlightening and just speak and talk about the facts. And I think that the best is that they make their question and they ask for answers. That what has been happened to Dr. Tabande and why.
So basically question the narrative that has been fed to them by the regime and the authorities and the
Yes.
falsehood of it. I would like to also, as a follower of Dr. Tabande, mention that two very eloquent statements by Dr. Tabande as the pillars of Gonabadi Sufi's faith. One was that there is nothing more precious than a human being's life. And no pious deed is higher and more valued than serving those in need. And in serving those in need, a Sufi has to be as life-giving and nurturing as a stream of pure water. And it is a moral duty of every Sufi to stand up to injustice and oppression, even to their own detriment. So if we follow these principles, I think there is hope for Ghanabali Sufism.
Just I would like to add some point, as I think that it's crucial. And because as you know, maybe from the outside it's not so obvious, but as you know, the Ghanabali dynasty is not the buildings, is not the people, is not even the mashayikhs, the sheikhs, but is the the qutb or the master, the master. So everything depends on him. And at this time, we believe that, and we know that the real master, which is introduced by the Dr. Tabande, is hidden, and we don't know where is he. So I think that we have to also calculate this element in, that to consider this element in our calculations.
Thank you. The next question is actually posed to all of you. What is the solution? What is the next step? We see all these gross and scary spikes in the oppression of each one of these groups, as you all mentioned. So what is the next step? What is the hope moving forward? Dr. Sarbaton, you want to start?
Yes, I'll be glad to. And first of all, I think the institutions, social institutions such as this institution, and of course institutions within Iran, they have the social obligation to bring the atrocities to the attention of the legal organizations, the international community, as well as the Iranians. So basically, from a more sociological point of view, social institutions have this obligation. But I'd like to even go further than that, because social institutions can only, and legal organizations can only go so far. In fact, as far as the Baha'is are concerned, appeals have been made over the past 40 years or more in the international community. So even though it has prevented a complete annihilation of the Baha'i community in Iran, unfortunately, the Iranian authorities have consistently refused to allow Baha'is to defend themselves. But more important than that, something that I think we share for all kinds of beliefs, religious, secular, atheist, otherwise, it is for the understanding of the Iranian people and the raising of the consciousness that the freedom of belief is the absolute core of the human rights in Iran. In other words, our beliefs is intricately tied to our identity. So if I happen to be a Ghanabadi Sufi, if I am a convert in Christianity, if I'm a Baha'i, if I'm an atheist, it is part of my identity. And to deny me that right, it is to deny my humanity, it is to deny my identity. This notion, this pivotal notion, is something that I am hoping that our fellow Iranian understand. And in fact, I am proud to say that over the past 40 years, many Iranians have really recognized this, but we need more than that. We need more understanding of the importance of freedom of belief and religion, because as soon as we put a stop to that, then we are allowing the injection of what our dear colleague, Mr. Sajidi and Mr. Petrosian say, is the injection of superstition and false claims into the mind of people who are prone to understanding them. So I think that this raising of consciousness is probably the most important aspect of the solution. It is not something that's going to happen overnight. It requires consistency, persistence, steadfastness, and frankly, resilience. And that's what I'm hoping we are doing here.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Petrosian to respond. Also, there is a question. Do you know how many Christians are in jail right now? If you can also answer this question.
First, I just want to mention one thing that's fantastic. What Mr. Sabet has said is very eloquently put the answer. But we are not born as a member of minority. We become a minority or a member of minority because of the laws and the structure of society and so on. And it's what as you said, we should raise the awareness and say that the freedom of belief is the core of the human rights and so on. But there are two things I want to mention. First, what foreign governments can do is to help persecuted Christians or members of religious minorities who find themselves outside Iran, who ask to become refugees or they're asylum seekers, and even some of them have their prison record and anything, and they're refused. I think they can be very helpful to help them to get settled down in outside Iran. So one thing. A second thing is that I think maybe it's kind of utopian thinking, but during the negotiation with Iranian state, either the situation of minorities should be mentioned or human rights in general, and put sanctions on people who violate the rights, human rights, including religious minorities' rights, and to hit them where it hurts. I mean, traveling to foreign countries, having the lovely businesses in Canada and US and so on. We know about that, and they can act as they acted regarding to other countries. And as there are many Christians who are waiting for the prison sentences, but more or less there are around 20 people who are in jail. But there are many that are waiting for the appeal, their sentences, and recently 7 of them were sentenced to 22 years in total to prison, including the one Armenian, 10 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajidi.
I will try to also answer 2 Persian questions that I see now on my screen. In my answer, very short. So just I have to mention that I would like to point out that I prefer from my beloved master to use the term of ethnical and religious varieties in place of minorities. Because the minority is an aspect from government, from angle of government, is a governmental aspect. But from an horizontal aspect, if we see each of us has right of citizenship, and we are citizens. We are human and then citizen. So I mean that between relation of in the relation between the people and the government, the government just should attitude to the aspect of citizenship of the people and not to their beliefs, or because the belief is not a substantial fact and it can be changed during the time of the life. But the substantial of human is always fixed and unchangeable. Another issue that Iran is a big mosaic of various religious beliefs and ethnics. That's why we have to respect this, and we have to know that the tactic, or better to say, the strategy of the Iranian regime is to atomize them, as he used the strategy of atomizing also against the opposition, and he was always success about that. Now he's trying to atomize I mean that to make it so small possible, and then they can handle them easily. So my point is that just if we see each other as a citizen, as human and citizen, regardless to beliefs, and just to write and see that the right of citizenship is an unnegotiable right, I think that then we will be automatically a big hole, a big wall, and then the government cannot, I mean that the state of the Iranian regime cannot see us as an atomized particulars.
Thank you very much. The next question is that in all human rights gatherings and sessions all over the world, there is constantly talk about minorities, where in reality, all these minorities together form the majority. So how can they attain their rights, defend their rights in a country such as Iran, under such a regime. Please, anybody who wants to.
Just I said that they are not minorities. They are somebody who. So when you say minority, you use quantity measurements, and this is the first step of violation of human rights. I think they are not minorities. They are other people, and they think like that. I mean that we are other clothes, for example. So the beliefs are not a substantial element of human. It's very important. So we may not name them as minorities. They are other people with other thinking, but they are a part of the big undividable humanity, or I mean, for example, Iranian society. This is my idea.
Mr. Garagozlu, I'm so glad that Mr. Sajidi brought up this issue and Mr. Petrosian emphasized it. But let me just point another dimension of this, that the question of minority is not exclusively the issue of the size of the population. I think there is a much more insidious concept that is being propagated here. Just let's focus on the word minority, which comes from minor, which means there is a major and then there's a minor. In other words, there are people who are superior and there are people who are inferior, and they are as minors. They don't understand as much. They're not educated. They have deviant beliefs. They're misguided. See, these all are concepts that are encapsulated in the word minority.
Yes.
It is my hope, and by the way, for those of us who speak Persian, the exact same thing is translated. Aqaliyat, meaning aqal, means those who are less, yes, who have less. It is my hope that we could destroy this concept within the mind and heart of Iranians to never think of any other individual as less. Because as soon as we think of someone else as less, that means there is someone else who is more and is superior and is imposing their ideology, their thoughts, their beliefs on other people. Iran traditionally has never been like that. I mean, the glorious past of Iran has been, in fact, very diverse, very tolerant, and very welcoming of different ideas. What happened? What has happened to that beauty of the diversity that we're seeing?
Yes.
So therefore, it is not a matter of legislation and all of that. It is a matter that we all, every Iranian citizen, need to recognize another Iranian as Iranian, with different beliefs, with different ideas, but not as less than them, not as more of them either. In other words, the idea is to just have equality. The idea is just have, equal footing for everybody, equal rights for everybody, which is the foundation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone would be enjoying the same rights and the same privileges. So it is my hope that we really think deeply about the word minority and its implication and subconscious impact that it has in the mind and behavior and speech of others.
I think one thing I should emphasize, maybe I differ with other guests here. I think the state and the constitution matters. And Islamic Republic is religious apartheid. It can be it can be even compared to South Africa, because everything is hierarchized via religion and so on. And I say that state matters because we see before that there was Pahlavi dynasty with a constitution, and they were more or less Iranian citizens, I mean religious minorities and so on, got much more freedom, social freedom and so on, compared to previous regimes. I think really matters. And the Iranian, if you look at history, we cannot say that always minorities or they was, they had very good life, and so there was a lot of discrimination. There were a lot of killing and murderings. I don't go to history. You can look at Safavi or others that even considered impure and so on. But during Pahlavi, I'm saying that I'm not royalist or anything, but we see a real change and real improvement, and it cannot be denied, and it was exceptional. Unfortunately, we fell into Islamic Republic's view, and now we are facing a religious apartheid. I hope that soon we can get a constitution that every Iranian has the same right that is Philomen and others.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a couple of points. One, that the consistent theme of all your opinions and analysis, including Ayatollah Masumi Tehrani, has been the same. He has mentioned the same things in his criticizing the use of the term aqalliyat and so forth. And that's a very critical point. And I would like to mention that, in my opinion, what happened during Pahlavi dynasty was not unusual. That was the usual representation of Iranian culture. What is unusual is what is happening now, what happened during Safavid dynasty, and the rest of this. The fact is there. Cyrus the Great was the first person that had the Declaration of Human Rights. So we need to go back to our roots and to our rich heritage. And this is a cultural invasion that needs to be tamed or eradicated, actually. And this is my opinion. There are two questions. One was asked from Mr. Petrosian and one directly from Mr. Sabetan. What are the statistics? How many Baha'is and Christians are in jail right now? Do you know?
The exact number in prison is difficult to mention because the Iranian government has created this revolving door that, arrest some Baha'is, sentence them, imprison them, and release some others on bail. So I would say probably on the average, there are about maybe somewhere between 70 to 100 people are in jail. I don't have the exact numbers, but as I'd mentioned, more than 1,000 Baha'is are still within the Iranian legal system with open dockets, with cases that are pending, and they go in and they have to put in really intolerable bail to get out, which basically deprives them of their means to have a livelihood. Basically whatever asset they have, whether it's a house or anything else, they have to put it on bail just so that they can be released from prison, just waiting until their sentence and hearing. So I would say it is anywhere between 70 to about 100 if I don't have an exact number.
Thank you.
It's exactly the same story, revolving doors that they sent out, they brought in, and so on. But as far as I know, there are 20 in jail, but there are a lot of more who are waiting for sentences and appealing or this anxiety. And they push them to leave countries too. They just start to bring them to court, send them back, and so on. They prefer they go to exile. Even they told them that it's better you move and so on.
Thank you. And I should mention that the same thing is true of Gonabadi Sufis. Currently, there are thousands of them stuck in this purgatory, so-called judicially purgatory, between internal exiles, summons to the court, and imprisonments. And the bail is actually a source of income, a major source of income for the corrupt judiciary. The next question is, how can the media contribute positively to these, raising the consciousness of the general population about these types of discriminations and persecution? I guess the question is about raising awareness within Iran, or both. Anybody wants to jump in?
If I may, I guess one of the most important things that the media can do is, while it respects the free speech of every individual and every human being, but to to balance it with preventing hate propaganda. Unfortunately, we are living in a society, both inside and outside of Iran, where it is promoted that anybody can say whatever they want, regardless of consequences. And we have seen the impact of individuals who propagate hate, who disseminate hatred in people, and it has consequences. In other words, the words that we say these words are not inconsequential. It could lead to riots, it could lead to killings. We have had specific instances of this issue in Iran when a clergy goes on a pulpit and says Baha'is are ritually unclean, they are spies, they are enemies of Islam, and they can be killed. The day after or a week after, a Baha'i has been actually stabbed to death. So the words do matter. The job of the media is to refuse to propagate hate. If there are programs that are put on YouTube against Gonabadis, against Baha'is, Christians, even against atheists, it is the job of the media to refuse to post it and to eliminate it. And in fact, I think they have those kind of policies. And we have been reporting these hate propaganda in social media, and they have the policy that as soon as they understand that it is hate propaganda, they remove it. So I think that is a major responsibility. But as I mentioned, it has to be balanced with free speech. Those who really have speech that is informative, I think is the job of media to observe that as well.
Thank you. Well, there is a comment and a question here that says, now that the ruling regime in Iran has basically taken over all these different religious groups, maybe with the exception of Baha'is, with a Khamenei appointed leader, how can they survive and change the setting? Perfect example is, as I said, different ethnicities of Sunnis, Gonabadi Sufis. Right now, the person as the spiritual leader of Gonabadi Sufis was approved and appointed by Khamenei himself. And this person, Ali Reza Jazdi, consistently encourages or orders as a spiritual leader of Gonabadi Sufis to participate in the elections, for example, the election that was banned by over 90% of people in Iran, be obedient to the government and their policies. And he even goes as far as ordering the Sufi women to cover themselves in sermons called Islamic hijab. Like the most I don't know what to call it, the ruling clergy states that what is happening to us is because of women's hijab and not observing the proper hijab. So the largest Sufi community in the world has been taken over by the regime. What is hope there for others and Gonabadi Sufis?
Ma'am, Duncan, I think now we just are sitting here and say that after 43 years or 44 years almost of Islamic Republic's rule, still today they send Christians, Baha'i dervishes to prison or civil rights activists or women. It means they failed. It means they failed to eradicate them, to submit them to their will, even after 2 generations, if we take I've considered 25 years as generation. I mean, for example, Christian converts, they started there were only a few hundreds before the revolution, and now some estimated from a few 100,000 to 1 million. We cannot have the exact number, but when you see different cities were raided, small even cities, house churches from the south to the north, and there are people, even one of the head of the intelligence in Iran said, we summoned them and we asked them questions in one city, and they were just ordinary people. And it was surprising for them. And for other people too. As resistance goes on, it shows that the policy fails. Of course, there are people who collaborate, as you said. And so some people can have, just play the propaganda of the regime, but we see that thousands others resist and say the other one, including the campaign for the right to worship for Persian-speaking Christians. Within Iran, within prison, it shows that Islamic Republic failed.
Well, sadly, we have reached the end of our program. We have only a few minutes. I really appreciate and thank you for your participation and your invaluable insight and comments. So if you can each speak for a few minutes as the final statement, comment. We start with Mr. Sajidi.
No, just my final recommendation or final solution. I think that is civil disobedience. It can help us, I think, for everybody.
Dr. Sabitan.
Well, again, I wanted to thank IOPHR for this gathering that we have because it's enlightening. I think that perhaps one of the most important things every Iranian citizen can do is to engage in social discourse and social action. In other words, whatever background we are, whether we are Baha'is, Sufis, Christians, atheists, environmentalists, let's get involved in things that are socially constructive. If there, as you mentioned, Mr. Aragozlu, if there is someone in need of food, let's give them food. If there's a child that needs tutoring and education, let's do that. By engaging in social action and what we all believe are the foundations of human rights, the first thing we do is that we fulfill our own identity as human beings. Secondly, we do not allow superstition, imposition, and superiority to basically take over our own belief, because what we are doing, we are helping others. And at this time, when inflation in Iran is unfortunately gripping the Iranian people, when we have so many social ills, by coming together and engaging in social action, we can actually help each other in addition to fulfilling our own deeper beliefs in humanity.
Thank you. A very critical and important point.
As our dear friend said, we need to become voice for the voiceless. We should support the needy. We should come into action, and we should use the love message, because hatred and hate propaganda is what Islamic Republic can do the best, and we use the same tool, we are going to lose. As Martin Luther King said, we cannot use the same values that our enemy uses. But we can become the voice of voiceless, and we remember that all of us are Iranians, and we belong to the same society, and its prosperity and peace is for all of us.
Well, in closing, thank you very much. I look forward to our more and more of these sessions. It's important for people to, both inside Iran and outside of Iran, to realize the depth and the horror of these atrocities. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.